What if everything you've been taught about the ancient Mayans is just the surface of a far deeper, stranger truth, one deliberately buried under centuries of silence? The Mayan civilization, often portrayed in history books as a people of impressive pyramids, intricate calendars, and bloody rituals, hides far more than it reveals. Behind the public story lies another layer. Fragments of knowledge scattered across forbidden temples, undeciphered glyphs, and oral traditions kept alive in remote villages. The Mayans were not merely a civilization lost to time. They were, in many ways, a people who chose to leave us clues, not answers. As we begin this journey into 33 of their most hidden secrets, we step into a world that defies modern logic. A world where time bends, spirits walk among the living, and the universe is not empty but encoded. Much of what we believe we know about the Mayans comes from a narrow lens, filtered through European conquest, colonial destruction, and modern reinterpretation. But the true Mayan story begins long before the Spanish arrived. It begins with a cosmology so profound that even now, scientists and mystics alike struggle to make sense of it. The Popol Vuh, often referred to as the Mayan Bible, describes the origins of the world not with brute facts, but with living metaphors, sacred twins, gods of corn and death, journeys to the underworld. These are not mere myths. They are encrypted knowledge systems, woven with astronomical precision and psychological depth. And yet, most people never read them. Why? Because to understand the Mayans, one must abandon the straight lines of Western reasoning and instead embrace the spirals and cycles of indigenous time. Let us begin with a secret most tourists will never hear. The Mayan pyramids were not built merely to honor gods or house tombs. Many of them are harmonically tuned to cosmic frequencies. Take El Castillo, the famous pyramid of Chichen Itza. During the equinoxes, the shadows cast by the setting sun create the illusion of a serpent slithering down the steps, a deliberate alignment that marks not only the seasons, but spiritual gateways. This is not coincidence. This is a civilization that engineered sacred geometry into stone. And while this is often mentioned, what is not revealed is that some believe the pyramid's chambers can enhance consciousness, acting as sound amplifiers or energy conductors. Local legends speak of shamans who would sit in these chambers to receive visions from the stars. Was this architecture, or was it a form of ancient technology? The Mayans were master astronomers. This is widely known. But here's what's less discussed. Their understanding of celestial movement was not purely observational, it was participatory. The stars were not distant balls of gas. They were beings. Every planet had a personality. Venus, for example, was seen as both a morning and evening star, a duality the Mayans believed had direct influence over war, fertility, and fate. They tracked Venus's movements with greater accuracy than any Old World culture, and some scholars suggest they used it not just for ritual timing, but to forecast social change. Could it be that their wars were not just political, but cosmically ordained? Could leaders have timed sacrifices or coronations to match the moods of the sky? Another hidden truth is the Mayans' relationship with time itself. Unlike the Gregorian calendar most of the world uses today, the Mayan long count measures time in cycles that stretch for thousands of years. The infamous 2012 prophecy, misunderstood as a doomsday prediction, was in fact a turning point in a vast cosmic clock. But why would a culture invest so much effort into tracking epochs that span millennia? Some believe it's because they saw history not as linear progress, but as echoes, patterns that repeat. Modern quantum theories of time looping and parallel timelines oddly echo this indigenous worldview. Were the Mayans intuitively grasping concepts physicists are only now exploring? Let us not forget their mysterious writing system, which for centuries resisted translation. The Mayan hieroglyphs were more than a way to record history. They were a sacred act. Every symbol had multiple meanings, often at once. A glyph for sun could also imply God, day, or consciousness, depending on its context. And many inscriptions are still undeciphered, especially those found in private collections or damaged sites. What knowledge is locked within those stones? Some researchers speculate that among the still mysterious glyphs are encoded principles of plant medicine, consciousness expansion, and even forgotten sciences. And here lies one of the most controversial whispers of all, that some of this knowledge was never meant for outsiders. Buried deep in the jungles of Guatemala and southern Mexico are sites yet untouched by modern archaeologists. In these remote regions, local Mayan descendants tell stories of sacred places that no outsider should ever enter, places where the ancestors still dwell, not in memory, but in presence. These are not mere tales of folklore. There have been reports, ignored by mainstream academia, of light anomalies, sudden sickness, and time disturbances experienced by those who intruded without ritual permission. Are these stories exaggeration, or do they point to something we can't yet explain? Equally fascinating is the Mayans' relationship with sound. In temples such as Palenque and Copan, whispering galleries and echo chambers suggest an advanced understanding of acoustic engineering. The clap echo at Chichen Itza mimics the call of the quetzal bird, sacred to the Mayans. But again, what goes unspoken is that these acoustic designs may have been more than symbolic. Shamans believed certain frequencies could induce trance states or open communication with other realms. Was their ritual music a form of technology, one that could alter brain waves and perceptions, similar to how binaural beats work today? The Mayan ball game, often romanticized as a sport, was far more than entertainment. The ball courts were arenas of ritual drama, symbolizing cosmic battles, life and death, and spiritual transformation. Winners may have been sacrificed, not as punishment, but as the ultimate honor. This defies modern logic, yet it reveals a deeper truth. To the Mayans, death was not an end, but a doorway. Those who died ritually were believed to assist in the balancing of worlds, their essence feeding not gods in some abstract sense, but the very cycles that sustained life. This view shifts everything. Sacrifice was not brutality, it was reciprocity. And then there's the enigma of the crystal skulls, objects found in Central America, often associated with the Mayans, though their provenance remains disputed. Some claim they are modern forgeries, others believe they are relics from an unknown civilization. Still, among the modern Maya, stories persist of skulls that hold ancestral memory, capable of transmitting visions or healing. Whether metaphor or artifact, the belief itself tells us something profound. The Mayans did not see history as separate from the now. The past could speak, if we listened correctly. Even their agricultural systems reveal hidden brilliance. The Mayans practiced milpa farming, rotating maize, beans, and squash in a way that sustained the soil without depletion. This triad provided all essential nutrients and required no artificial fertilizer. More than that, the act of planting maize was a spiritual ritual. The maize god was central to Mayan life, not as an abstract deity, but as a living force embodied in every cornstalk. The earth was not exploited, it was engaged in dialogue. Today, as the world grapples with environmental collapse, perhaps we should not just admire Mayan agriculture, but learn from it. And then, we must talk about their cities, like Tikal, Calakmul, and Yaxchilan. massive urban centers hidden beneath jungle canopy, aligned with celestial bodies, connected by sakbiob, or white roads that glowed under moonlight. These roads may have had symbolic meaning, representing paths to the spirit world. But some theorists suggest they may have also facilitated trade and communication at night, perhaps even guiding pilgrimages. The full extent of the Mayan world remains unknown. LiDAR technology has recently revealed thousands of hidden structures, suggesting a population far larger than previously estimated. Were the Mayans more connected than we imagined? As we begin to unravel these 33 secrets, one thing becomes clear. The Mayans were not a primitive people reaching upward for gods they barely understood. They were a sophisticated, spiritual, and scientific civilization, one whose legacy has been misinterpreted, suppressed, or forgotten. They understood cycles, symbols, stars, and soil in ways that modern science is only beginning to respect. And maybe, just maybe, their greatest secret is not something buried in the past, but something waiting to be remembered in the present. Before we move to the next part, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think the Mayans truly knew that we still don't? Do you believe knowledge can be lost forever, or just hidden, waiting for the right moment to be seen again? As we continue our descent into the depths of Mayan knowledge, we encounter one of the most startling aspects of their civilization: their concept of duality. Unlike the binary thinking of good versus evil that shapes much of Western religious and philosophical traditions, the Mayans embraced duality as balance, not opposition. Night and day were not enemies, but essential halves of a cosmic rhythm. The jaguar, a powerful and recurring symbol in Mayan culture, exemplified this belief. It roamed both the jungle and the underworld, embodying both light and shadow. In Mayan art, we see gods with two faces, temples with mirrored sides, and ceremonies that honored both birth and death. This philosophical approach influenced their governance, their rituals, and even their architecture. To understand the Mayan world is to abandon either-or thinking and instead embrace the beauty of coexisting truths, of paradox, of integration. One of the most chilling, yet often misunderstood mysteries is the widespread practice of skull modification. Elite Mayan children had their skulls bound to elongate them into shapes that resembled corn, a sacred crop, or divine imagery. To modernize, it may appear extreme, even grotesque, but to the Mayans, it was a way to physically align oneself with higher beings. This cranial shaping signified not deformity, but spiritual elevation. It was a symbol of status, identity, and sacred purpose. Alongside this, Mayans also filed their teeth into intricate patterns, sometimes inlaid with jade. Again, this was not vanity, but a sacred aesthetic. Each alteration carried ritual meaning, transforming the body into a canvas of belief. The Mayans also possessed an uncanny understanding of the human body and its connection to the stars. Their medicine combined herbs, minerals, spiritual diagnosis, and energetic healing. Some modern researchers are only beginning to grasp the pharmacological potential of the plants they used. Beyond physical treatment, illness was seen as an imbalance, not only in the body, but in the soul, the family, or even the cosmos. Healers, or Ajman, were not simply doctors. They were spiritual technicians. They used prayers, ceremonies, and dream interpretation alongside poultices and smoke to realign a person with their spiritual path. Some illnesses, they believed, were sent by gods to realign the individual with their destiny. What if, beneath the surface, Mayan medicine holds keys to healing not just illness, but disconnection? And what of the temples? Many assume these pyramidal structures were simply tombs or platforms for sacrifices. But when viewed through the lens of astronomy and acoustics, their function changes dramatically. The Temple of the Inscriptions at Palenque is more than a burial site. It is a codex in stone, a massive celestial calendar. Temple staircases align with solstices. Roof combs align with constellations. In certain chambers, sounds echo in perfect resonance with chants. These temples were, in essence, tools. They were designed not only to house rituals but to conduct them, to amplify energy, direct consciousness, and perhaps even open portals to other dimensions of awareness. Language, too, was sacred to the Mayans. They believed words carried not just meaning, but force. The act of naming was an act of creation. In the Popol Vuh, when the gods create humans, they do so through speech, speaking them into being. This belief shaped their ceremonies, where chants and prayers were not casual utterances, but acts of cosmic engineering. Every word was chosen for its spiritual vibration. This is reflected in the surviving chants passed down among modern-day Maya, where the cadence and rhythm are more important than literal meaning. Could it be that the Mayans knew how to use language to shape reality in ways we've forgotten? Their mathematics, too, holds secrets. The Mayan number system, based on vigesimal, base 20, included a concept of zero, a discovery that would not appear in Europe until centuries later. But it's not just their ability to count that amazes, it's how they infused numbers with symbolic power. The number 13, for example, was not unlucky, but sacred, linked to the levels of the heavens. The number 9 represented the underworld. Their calendars reflect this numerology. The Tzolk'in, sacred calendar, runs in 260-day cycles, combining 13 numbers with 20-day signs. This calendar governed not just festivals, but spiritual timing, determining the best days for planting, healing, even naming children. This is timed not as clockwork, but as spiritual rhythm, each day a unique configuration of cosmic forces. Another mystery lies in the way Mayan cities were constructed, not chaotically, but with deliberate sacred geometry. Urban layouts aligned with cardinal directions, celestial events, and energy flow. Cenotes, or sacred wells, were not just water sources, but entrances to the underworld. Some temples were built directly above them, suggesting a belief that spiritual power flowed from below the earth. The cities themselves became maps of the cosmos, where architecture mirrored the heavens. To walk through a Mayan city was to walk through a living mandala. In this way, space was not neutral. It was charged. Modern energy practitioners speak of geomancy and ley lines. Could the Mayans have mapped such lines long before us? Among the most debated of the Mayan secrets is their sudden decline. Around the 9th century, many major cities were abandoned, not destroyed, but slowly vacated. No one knows exactly why. Climate change, warfare, political upheaval, or perhaps a deliberate retreat. Some Mayan descendants speak of a spiritual withdrawal, a pulling back from the material world to preserve sacred knowledge. The idea that a civilization could choose to vanish rather than be conquered defies conventional history. Yet the jungle quickly covered their works, and the world forgot, until recent rediscoveries began to stir the old stories again. Then we come to the enigmatic codices, Mayan books made of bark paper, painted with hieroglyphs and cosmic diagrams. Of the hundreds that once existed, only 4 survive. The rest were burned by conquistadors and missionaries who saw them as demonic. Imagine the knowledge lost: astronomical charts, medicinal guides, prophecies, history. Yet even the surviving codices hint at a worldview as complex as it is beautiful. The Dresden Codex, for example, contains eclipse predictions, flood warnings, and ritual instructions, evidence of a people who understood their universe as interactive, not inert. Many also overlooked the role of women in Mayan society. While patriarchal elements existed, there were powerful queens, priestesses, and midwives who held spiritual and political authority. Women played key roles in lineage, inheritance, and ritual life. Goddesses like Ixchel, the deity of fertility, weaving, and medicine, were central figures. Modern Mayan women continue these traditions, keeping rituals alive in ways that often go unnoticed by outsiders. In this, we see a continuity of sacred feminine wisdom, one not erased, but quietly preserved. Mayan warfare, too, is often misunderstood. Though battles occurred, warfare was not always about conquest. It was often ritualized, symbolic, cyclical. Captives were not merely prisoners. They were chosen for their symbolic role in restoring cosmic balance. Bloodletting ceremonies, too, were not acts of cruelty, but of sacrifice, offering part of oneself back to the universe. Blood was the currency of life, the essence that sustained the gods. And in return, the gods sustained the world. It was a cycle, not of fear, but of reverence. Finally, we must look at the people themselves, because the Mayans did not disappear. They are not relics of the past. Millions of Mayan descendants live today in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. They speak the old languages, tend the sacred corn, and keep the calendar. Though their traditions were suppressed, they endured. And now, in a time when the world hungers for meaning, their wisdom calls again, not as a whisper from the ruins, but as a living voice from the present. Let us continue this journey in the next part, where we will explore more of these hidden truths, diving deeper into lost rituals, untold legends, and revelations waiting to awaken something ancient within us all. As we dive further into the layered reality of the ancient Mayans, we arrive at a realm where myth, ritual, and science become inseparable. It is within this intricate fusion that we uncover another powerful secret: the Mayans' understanding of dreams. Far from viewing dreams as random or subconscious noise, the Mayans treated them as sacred messages, glimpses into other realms, warnings from ancestors, or instructions from gods. Shamans would often go into trance states, guided by rhythmic drumming or sacred plants, to access dream worlds where they could retrieve knowledge. In some regions, entire families would gather at dawn to discuss their dreams, interpreting them communally. This was not superstition. It was cosmology in practice. To the Mayans, the unseen was no less real than the visible, and dreams were a bridge between the two. Among the tools used to cross this bridge were entheogens, plants that facilitated altered states of consciousness. The balchet tree, morning glories, tobacco, and mushrooms were used not for escape, but for alignment. These substances were administered in rituals under strict guidance, intended to open gateways to divine knowledge. Archaeological findings in ceremonial sites reveal murals of priests and nobles interacting with serpentine figures, symbols often associated with vision states. These visions were not illusions, they were interactions with spirit entities, cosmic forces, or ancestors. The Mayan worldview did not draw hard lines between spirit and matter. Everything was interconnected in a vast, breathing cosmos. Our modern culture may have lost this reverence, but the ancient Mayans lived by it. Perhaps one of the most visually striking elements of Mayan culture is their stelae, tall, carved stone monuments that dot the plazas of ancient cities. These stelae were not simply markers of kingship or vanity projects. They were historical and metaphysical records. Each carving contained dates, events, and symbolic language. But some stelae go beyond mere chronology. They include depictions of sky serpents, portals, and gods descending from the heavens. These are not easy to interpret with a Western mindset. Some researchers suggest these depictions represent astronomical alignments. Others believe they depict ritual journeys into other worlds. Still others speculate, controversially, that they record encounters with non-human intelligences. Whatever the truth, the stelae were designed to be read not only by eyes, but by spirit. An equally fascinating mystery lies in the Mayans' silence about certain subjects. While their cities boasted elaborate records of royal bloodlines and rituals, there are notable gaps. Events or figures never explained. Why were some temples sealed off? Why do certain glyphs remain indecipherable even today? Some believe these are merely accidents of history, lost knowledge due to decay or destruction. But others suggest a more deliberate act, that the Mayans encoded some knowledge in such a way that only those with the right training, mindset, or ritual purity could access it. In this view, wisdom was not a right but a responsibility. Too powerful to be given freely, it had to be earned. This leads us to another often ignored insight, the role of silence in Mayan spirituality. Modern society floods us with noise, but the Mayans knew the value of stillness. In their ceremonies, moments of absolute silence were as important as spoken chants. It was believed that in silence, the divine could speak most clearly. The inner voice, the whisper of the gods, the guidance of the ancestors, all of these required a quiet vessel. Monuments were placed in ways that created acoustic still points, and caves were revered not only for their spiritual energy, but for the absolute darkness and silence they offered. This was not absence, it was presence. And speaking of caves, few aspects of Mayan spirituality are more profound than their use of the underworld. Known as Xibalba, the Mayan underworld was not a place of eternal punishment, but of transformation. It was both feared and revered, a necessary realm of trial, growth, and renewal. Caves were seen as entrances to this underworld, and many rituals, including sacrifices, were held there. Archaeologists have found offerings of jade, pottery, and even human remains deep in cave systems, arranged with ritual precision. For the Mayans, descending into a cave was not merely physical. It was symbolic of dying to the self, confronting chaos, and emerging renewed. This idea, that the path to wisdom runs through darkness, is echoed in initiatory traditions around the world. Let us also consider their concept of lineage. Bloodlines were sacred not just in royal contexts, but in familial and communal structures. Ancestors were not gone. They were present, active, and honored. Altars within homes often bore relics or symbolic items to maintain this connection. Birthdays were not casual celebrations, but sacred echoes of the cosmic conditions into which a soul entered the world. The Mayan calendar, particularly the Tzolk'in, was used to chart a person's spiritual path based on the day sign under which they were born. Each person had a unique role in the cosmic order, a mission embedded in their very being. This cosmic identity guided career choices, marital pairings, and ceremonial duties. Imagine a society where astrology wasn't a curiosity, but a communal guide. Let us pause and turn our gaze outward, beyond the forests and ruins, to the stars. The Mayans' obsession with the Milky Way, what they called the Wakachan, or world tree, speaks volumes. To them, the Milky Way was not just a galaxy, but a celestial river, a great serpent, a path of souls. During certain times of year, it aligned directly overhead, marking sacred periods for ceremony. They believed the souls of the dead traveled this river to the afterlife. modern astronomers are just beginning to understand the galactic core's energetic impact on Earth. Could it be that the Mayans were attuned to cosmic forces we are only now rediscovering? And what of their sacred animals? Every creature held symbolic and spiritual weight. The jaguar represented the night sun and the underworld, the hummingbird, resurrection and agility of spirit. The serpent, wisdom and transformation. Animal encounters were interpreted as messages. To see a certain bird before a ceremony or a snake during a dream carried meaning that guided decisions. These weren't mere symbols, they were living archetypes. The natural world was not a backdrop, but a sacred text to be read, honored, and protected. The Mayans also developed a system of education that extended beyond rote learning. Young members of elite families were trained not only in writing and astronomy, but in ethics, speechcraft, and sacred history. Wisdom was a public duty. Storytelling was more than entertainment. It was a method of preserving and transmitting sacred memory. Elders, known as Ajayakikiji, or daykeepers, passed down these lessons orally, often through mythic tales layered with meaning. The young were trained to listen not just with ears, but with heart and intuition. Knowledge was never static. It lived in the telling. As we survey all of this, rituals, architecture, medicine, dreams, silence, and stars, one truth rises again and again. The Mayans were keepers of a cosmic balance. They sought not dominance over nature, but harmony with it. They believed the health of a person reflected the health of the land, the sky, and the spirits. Their calendars and ceremonies were not superstition. They were systems of attunement, aligning human life with the larger symphony of creation. And in this, perhaps, lies their greatest legacy. Not just the glyphs or pyramids, but a way of being, a sacred stance toward life that asks us to listen, align, and remember. In the next part, we will journey even deeper as we uncover Mayan secrets that touch on portals, prophecy, interdimensional wisdom, and the mysterious knowledge passed down to the living by those who walk the spirit path unseen. These are not mere tales of the past. They are, perhaps, invitations for the future. As we journey deeper into the arcane truths of the Mayan civilization, we must begin to ask whether what they left behind was ever intended to be understood in linear fashion. Some of the most mysterious artifacts recovered from Mayan territories defy easy categorization. Objects carved with unknown symbols, metallic instruments of unclear origin, and artistic renderings that suggest visions far beyond what history dares admit. Among these are depictions that resemble portal-like structures, interdimensional beings, and hybrid creatures that hint at contact not just across cultures, but possibly across dimensions. The ancient Mayans, as their descendants still assert, did not consider reality to be limited to what is seen. There were worlds behind the veil, and those who walked the sacred path could sometimes pass between them. Not in fantasy, but in ceremony, in spirit, and in deep consciousness. The temple inscriptions at Copan and Quirigua speak not only of kings and wars, but of star beings and sky lords descending at specific times, always aligned with key planetary positions. These mentions are often overlooked by mainstream historians, who reduce them to metaphors. But among modern-day Ajayquij, or Mayan spiritual guides, these accounts are remembered as literal truths, albeit truths that require a different kind of seeing. The Maya were not obsessed with aliens, as pop culture might suggest, but with the celestial. The sky was alive, intelligent, and involved. And some of their oldest prophecies speak of a time when the veil will thin again, and the cosmic ancestors will return. Whether this is literal or metaphoric, it carries an urgent tone. For the Maya, prophecy is not prediction. It is memory returned in cyclical time. This leads us to one of the most controversial and powerful aspects of Mayan wisdom, their understanding of time travel, not in the science fiction sense of machines and wormholes, but as a spiritual discipline. Through trance, ritual, and calendrical alignment, they believed one could step outside of ordinary time and access ancestral wisdom or future potential. This was often done through the sacred fires, where time collapsed and messages came not in sentences, but in symbols, sensations, and visions. Certain caves and temples were considered time vortexes, places where initiates could commune with what we would call past or future selves. The Tzolk'in calendar was used like a map for these journeys, identifying power days when the cosmic fabric thinned. While we may not yet understand how to measure such phenomena, perhaps it is not they who are primitive, but we who have forgotten. Another deeply misunderstood element is the Mayans' connection to the concept of resonance. They believed that everything in the universe vibrated, and that spiritual health came from maintaining harmony with the vibration of one's destiny. This was not just poetic, it was measurable. Sound played a critical role in aligning energy. Certain instruments, such as the turtle-shell drum, the conch-shell trumpet, and ceramic whistles shaped like animals, were used not for melody, but for vibration. These sounds were said to open energy centers within the body, the land, and the stars. Modern science now acknowledges the healing potential of sound therapy. Could the Mayans have practiced this centuries before we gave it clinical names? Let's now reflect on their concept of prophecy, so often reduced to the 2012 phenomenon, misunderstood as an apocalyptic end. In truth, 2012 marked the completion of a Baktun, a 394-year cycle in the Mayan long count calendar. It was not the end of time, but the end of an era. Elders described it as the time when the center would move and the energies of balance would shift. Rather than destruction, it was a doorway, one requiring spiritual maturity to pass through. Mayan prophecy was not about fear, but about preparation. The messages encoded in their calendars call us to remember our place in the great rhythm, to restore harmony with earth and spirit, before the imbalance becomes irreversible. These warnings are more relevant now than ever before. One of the most closely guarded secrets within Mayan tradition is the power of sacred names. Each person was believed to have multiple names: the name given at birth, the name discovered in ceremony, and the name that could not be spoken, known only to the divine. Knowing and using someone's sacred name invoked their soul's full essence. This was why names were carefully chosen with the guidance of daykeepers and seers. Names held frequency, and misusing one could cause imbalance. This view of language is vastly different from modern usage, where words are cheapened by repetition and noise. The Mayans remind us that to speak is to cast spells, every syllable a wave shaping the world. The Mayan relationship with the elements, earth, water, fire, and air, was not symbolic alone. Each element was a being, a force, and a teacher. Rituals were performed to feed the elements and maintain balance in nature. Fires were lit not just for warmth or cooking, but as living altars that communicated with the cosmos. Water ceremonies, often performed at cenotes, were designed to ask permission from the spirits before drawing life from their domain. The earth was honored before planting. Even air was ritually engaged through incense, breathwork, and the blowing of conch shells. This animistic reverence created a reciprocal relationship with nature. The Mayans saw themselves not as rulers of nature, but as her stewards, partners in a sacred covenant. The deeper we explore, the more evident it becomes that the Mayans were architects not only of cities, but of consciousness. Their temples, calendars, ceremonies, and social structures were not randomly developed. but built upon cosmic principles that we are only beginning to understand. The loss of their codices, the suppression of their language, and the colonization of their beliefs was not just cultural violence. It was a disconnection from one of humanity's most sophisticated attempts to live in resonance with the universe. And yet, the story is not over. Among the highlands and jungles, among families who still speak Yucatec, Quiche, and Quechua, the old ways survive. Not in museums, but in breath, in fire, in dreams. The grandmothers still plant the corn with prayer. The shamans still keep the calendar. The spirits are still honored in caves and forests. The Mayans did not disappear. They adapted. They remembered. And perhaps they've been waiting, not just to be rediscovered, but to be listened to on their terms. In the final part, we will explore the last and most powerful secrets, those that challenge the very structure of Western history and science. Secrets that speak to energy, soul migration, star knowledge, and the forgotten potential within the human spirit. Prepare yourself. The veil is thinner now. As we approach the final layer of this vast and sacred journey into Mayan wisdom, we must look not only at what was lost, but at what remains hidden in plain sight, within us. For the most profound of the 33 secrets is not a ruin in the jungle, nor a glyph on stone, nor a mystery locked in a codex. It is the knowledge that the human being, according to the ancient Maya, is a reflection of the cosmos itself. The body was not just a vehicle for the soul, but a map, a sacred replica of the universe. The head aligned with the heavens, the feet with the underworld, and the heart with the axis mundi, the cosmic center. Each part of the body corresponded to a day sign, an element, a god. Illness, confusion, and disconnection were not personal failures, but signs that one's internal cosmos had drifted out of rhythm with the greater whole. This internal-external harmony was mirrored in their belief in soul migration. The Maya believed that after death, the soul did not simply go to a static heaven or hell, it journeyed. It passed through levels, faced tests, was purified, and eventually returned. Reincarnation was not rare but expected, especially for those with unfinished duties. The soul could even choose its next incarnation based on what it had learned. In this view, history was not a chain of accidents, but a web of soul agreements. Cycles within cycles, woven with intention. This teaching, though suppressed, still lives quietly in the oral traditions of modern Maya. To those who listen, it offers a vision of life, not as a straight line, but as a spiral of becoming. One of the final secrets we must face is the question of energy. The Maya understood that every place, person, and moment had its own energy, a force called chulel. This life force could be strengthened or weakened through actions, words, intentions. Temples were built at energetic crossroads, where the chulel flowed most freely. People were taught to protect their energy through offerings, cleanliness, prayer, and silence. Not to hoard it, but to circulate it wisely. Even land was understood to carry ancestral energy. Sacred groves, waterfalls, stones, all had their own memory. Disturbing them without permission could disrupt one's fate. Honoring them could bring vision, healing, and peace. As we reflect on these truths, a quiet realization emerges. The Mayans were not just people of the past. They were, and are, guardians of a different kind of memory. A memory not stored in books, but in breath, fire, and rhythm. A memory encoded in cornfields, temples, and chants. A memory that lives in the silence between stars and the pulse within us. They remind us that knowledge is not accumulation, it is attunement. That progress is not speed, it is harmony, that life is not conquest, it is connection. For centuries, the dominant narrative painted the Maya as a people who vanished, their temples swallowed by jungle, their gods buried in myth. But the truth is simpler and more powerful. They never vanished. They were silenced. And now their voice is returning, not in stone, but in spirit. In the resurgence of indigenous languages, in the rebirth of traditional ceremonies, in the dreams that stir within those who listen to the earth, in the fires that still burn under night skies, in the knowing that something ancient, something beautiful, something essential has waited patiently for us to remember. Perhaps the most haunting and hopeful secret of all is this. The Maya believed we are all connected, not just by blood or history, but by breath, by story, by purpose. We are part of a great unfolding, each of us a thread in the cosmic weave. And though the calendar may shift, though empires may rise and fall, the song of the stars continues. And those who learn to hear it, really hear it, are never truly lost. So now we ask you, not as a viewer, but as a fellow traveler, what will you do with what you've heard? Will you see the ruins as dead stones or as living codes? Will you dismiss these secrets as legend or feel them stir in your own bones? Will you remember? If this journey moved you, leave a comment below with what resonated most deeply. Share your thoughts. Speak your truth. For in doing so, we don't just honor the Maya, we become part of the remembering, part of the return. And perhaps, just perhaps, that is exactly what they were waiting for. Thank you for walking with us through the Andes, through history, and through faith. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to check out another interesting video.